Hi y'all, today I'm going to make chocolate cherry cake. It's a real easy recipe. For the cake part, you're going to need 1 package of fudge cake mix, a 21-ounce can of cherry fruit filling, 1 teaspoon of almond extract, and 2 eggs beaten. And heat your oven to 350 to start, and then in a 13 by 9 pan, grease and flour it. But I like to use Baker's Joy to do that. It's just all in one, and I like this. It works real well. And then for the frosting ingredients, you want 1 cup of sugar. That's my oven preheated. 5 tablespoons of butter, 1/3 cup of milk, and a 6-ounce package or measured out 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate morsels or chips. I've got mini chips, but I'm just going to measure out 1 cup and use those today. They're going to be melted into the frosting, so it doesn't matter if they're the regular size or the mini. But anyway, I'm going to get a bowl and grease and flour my pan, and I'll be right back. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is take the Baker's Joy, and if you don't have this, just grease your pan the regular way you do with butter or shortening or nonstick spray, and then just sprinkle a couple tablespoons of flour in there and shake it all around till the pan's fully coated. But I'm going to use this Baker's Joy to spray it real quick. Just to save time. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside for now, because this is only going to take a couple minutes to mix up. It's really simple. So first thing you want to do is take 2 eggs and go ahead and just beat them up. And then you're going to take 1 teaspoon of the almond extract. And this is what gives it a really nice flavor that's different. It goes real well with the cherries and the chocolate. You can smell it immediately. Okay, the next thing I do is take the can of cherry pie filling, and you're going to mix this by hand. So I just scrape out the entire can, get all the juice, or whatever you would call this. It's not really juice. Out of there. And then I just kind of mix that a little bit first. You don't have to, but just kind of, just to thin it out a little bit. Then you take your cake mix. And you just stir it by hand until it's all combined. I like to do it this, well, I like to do it this way because I like for the cherries to stay in as whole of pieces as they can. But I've done it before with my KitchenAid mixer on low just to bring it together. It'll just break up the cherries a little bit, but the taste is still the same. But it's not going to be as runny as cake batter. It's more of a, it looks thick right here because you're not adding any oil or water. You want to kind of make sure all your dry spots of cake mix are incorporated. So it looks thick right here, but it doesn't cook up that way. It cooks up more like a regular cake. Then you have pieces of cherry all throughout it, and they're nice and moist and soft. So now take that pan. And I like to scrape the bowl well. I don't want to waste any of this batter. And you just kind of want to spread it out in the pan just to cover the whole pan. You can do this with, I'm using an offset spatula that I usually use for decorating cookies, but I'm just using it because it's easy. But you can just use the back of a spoon or your spatula. And you just kind of want it to be all the same evenness around the pan. Okay, so I've got that ready to go, and I'm going to put it in my 350 degree oven, and we're going to bake it for 25 to 30 minutes, but mine will be done at 25 minutes because I know how my oven cooks. So set your timer for 25 and then check it from there, and we'll be back. Okay, so mine was in the oven for 25 minutes, I think. Yeah, and see, the toothpick comes out clean. So it's ready. Okay, so I'm going to gather the ingredients for the frosting and I'll be right back. Okay, y'all. So while the cake is sitting in its pan, cooling on a wire rack, we're going to start the frosting ingredients. So it's 5 tablespoons of butter, 1 cup of sugar, and 1/3 cup of milk. And we're going to bring this to a boil. And once it boils, we're going to stir it constantly for 1 minute. Then we'll remove it from the heat and add the chocolate chips and stir those until melted. So right now we're just going to start the mixture. So I'll be right back whenever the butter melts. So my butter is pretty much completely melted. I've got it on medium to medium-high heat to get it going. And that took about maybe less than 2 minutes to melt the butter. So now we're just waiting for it to come to a boil. And just remember, you want to, once it starts boiling, you're going to stir constantly for 1 minute straight. So I'll be back when it comes to a boil. Okay, so that was literally about 5 to 10 seconds now, and it's starting to boil. Okay, I would say that's boiling. So I'm going to set my timer for 1 minute. Now we're going to stir it constantly. I'm going to turn my heat down to just a little over medium, but it's still going to boil. Make sure you get in the corners of your pan and everything. You don't want anything to stick and scorch. Okay, so now we're going to remove it from the heat. And I'm going to immediately dump in the cup of chocolate chips. And at this point, I'm going to switch to either a wooden spoon or a heat-proof spatula. I'm going to use a wooden to melt the chocolate. And just stir this till all the chocolate is melted and combined. And it's smooth. It's going to be a pretty rich frosting. And this is just the frosting that came with the recipe originally, but I don't usually make this to go on top. I usually make my own homemade buttercream chocolate frosting, or I used to just use the ready to frost cans of frosting like Betty Crocker or Pillsbury or whatever. But I've noticed over the last few years there must be something in it like preservatives or chemicals, I don't know, but it makes me sick to my stomach, so I don't use that canned frosting anymore. But you can use whatever you like. So if you want to keep the cake simple, just make the cake and use a can of prepared frosting chocolate to frost it. This is kind of like a fudgy frosting. So now I'm going to just pour this over the still cooling cake, and it doesn't matter if the cake is warm or not, because this is just kind of melt on top of it, and then as it cools it'll set up. And it is setting, almost like fudge. Actually, even if you don't want to use chocolate frosting, you can use any kind of frosting you want on this. The cake is delicious no matter what. My husband likes it with no frosting at all. He'll just eat the cake. So once you pour your frosting on, then just spread it. And then it'll kind of set as a fudge topping as the cake cools. So that's pretty good. So I'm just going to leave that now to set to cool, and then I'll slice it up once it's cool. I'll be back. Okay, y'all. It's not quite totally cooled, but I want to try a piece. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it, or I'm going to cut the first row anyway. So normally I would cut 6 rows and then in thirds the long ways. So anyway, I'm going to just cut this first row for now. So I'm going to get this corner piece and see if, oh yeah, you can see the cherry in that. So see, you can see the cherry in there. And I'm going to taste it real quick. Let me get a fork. It's really good. If you don't want to take the time to make that frosting, but I think you should. It tastes pretty good with it. This is one of the canned ones I'm talking about that's ready to spread. But it's worth it to take the extra few minutes to make the frosting. It tastes really good with the cake. Anyway, I'll leave the recipe down below as usual. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.